Ahlan wa salam from Jerusalem. Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Dan Diker together with Khaled Toameh. We're bringing you our Middle East. Hamas on its last legs in Gaza, an Israeli-Arab surprise, and the dangers of bringing the PA back to Gaza. Stay with us. Khaled, there are some dramatic developments that we have to talk about. We want our participating audience, we call them our family and friends from across the seas, to really be here with us at a very, very dramatic moment. Is Hamas on its last legs? We saw the IDF, in the Hamas parliament in Gaza. What a picture that is for people that understand perception warfare.
I would say, Dan, that in the past 24 hours, Hamas has suffered some symbolic blows. It started off with the press conference that was held by the IDF spokesman, in which he revealed that Hamas was using the Rantisi hospital. It's a hospital for child cancer in Gaza City as a base for its activities. We saw on TV that there is a bunker in the basement, which was used by Hamas, and apparently some of the hostages were being held there, according to the IDF. Now, why is this very important? Because it comes at a time when Hamas and the rest of the world, or many in the international community, are talking about Israeli attacks on hospitals, and that it's unjustified, and that there's no reason for it. And here comes the IDF and shows us this, how Hamas is using hospitals. This was a major blow to Hamas, to a point where two leaders of Hamas had to appear shortly after the IDF spokesman's announcement on Al Jazeera and completely deny it. I mean, it's just denial without any context, without providing any details. It's like, it's not true, it's not true, it's not true.
They were caught red-handed.
Yeah.
They did Shifa Hospital. They were in the basement of Shifa Hospital. They were lying about the grand deception. This is part of the strategy. The Israelis say, we know for sure. Amos Yadlin, the former head of military intelligence, told BBC, we know for sure they're in the basement. You're saying we knew for sure that they were in Rantisi Hospital, using it as a command and control center, using it to store ammunition, using human shields, those poor patients that are in both hospitals, including children, and now they have egg all over their faces because they were caught red-handed.
That's why I say this is a significant development. It pulls the carpet from under Hamas's legs or feet, and it shows that, Hamas has not been telling the truth, that it has actually been lying about using hospitals and about hiding behind patients and using Palestinians as human shields in Gaza. So that's blow number one for Hamas. Shortly afterwards, we get this picture of Israeli soldiers where, in one of the most important institutions in Gaza, the building of the Palestinian Legislative Council. This is a very powerful image. I used to cover what happens in that parliament building, and we used to see the leaders of Hamas sitting there, passing laws, issuing statements, holding consultations, even voting. And here, suddenly you see the idea of sitting in the places where Ismail Haniyeh, where Khalil al-Hayya, and other Hamas leaders were sitting. When such pictures are broadcast to the local, to the Palestinian public and to the Arab and Muslim world, this looks very bad for Hamas.
You know what it looks like? It reminds me of when the Allied forces led by the United States were sitting in Saddam Hussein's palace, which he had used in those torture chambers way underneath the ground.
First of all, it also shows the depth of the Israeli ground operation. It shows that the IDF is actually in the center of Gaza. Secondly, and we had another image which was very important, which was the IDF sitting in the headquarters of the military intelligence of Hamas in Gaza. Again, this is a severe blow. You know, these pictures are very powerful. And later we also had the IDF capturing the headquarters or the government complex of Hamas. What does this mean for Hamas? It's a sign that the Hamas regime is crumbling. It sends a message to other Palestinians that, you see, Hamas is on its way out. And I've been hearing reports from Gaza of Palestinians walking into Hamas bases, empty bases, and looting them and stealing from them. And I've seen, or I've heard of reports in Gaza of Palestinians who are, I don't want to say celebrating, but beginning to express satisfaction with what they see as the beginning of the end of Hamas. We always have to remember, not all Palestinians in Gaza are Hamas supporters. Yes, Hamas does have a lot of following in Gaza, but there are also many people in Gaza who are opposed to Hamas and who are waiting for the first opportunity. And here comes the IDF and provides them with the first opportunity, or with what appears to be an opportunity to seize power in Gaza. If this operation continues as it is continuing, and we continue to see more Hamas institutions falling into the hands of the Israel Defense Forces, the next step will be that you will see Palestinians taking, following in that path and trying to also seize institutions of Hamas over there. This is a very dramatic and very important development in this war.
Absolutely, Khaled. And they talk about they talk about jokingly about the Hamas metro, which is bigger than the New York subway system, but it's a metro. It's a subway of terror underneath the ground that they have, with malice aforethought, prevented Palestinian public from being protected underneath underneath the ground, when they have hundreds of kilometers of underground bunkers. And
yeah, but how are they going to help them if the IDF is going to be sitting in Gaza for weeks, if not months? Can they survive in these bunkers? They'll have to come out sooner or later. The Egyptians don't want them. They're not going to open the border and allow them to come in. So they'll be stuck in these bunkers underground in their own, tunnels. And I don't see how. I believe that we will soon start seeing Hamas members surrendering to the IDF.
Yeah,
coming out with the white
flags.
And this will, again, be another major development in this war.
So here you see, as Hamas is beginning to collapse, and we know from IDF numbers, by the way, that there are somewhere between 15 and 16, maybe 17,000 Hamas terror fighters that have been killed, which is, probably half the Hamas regular force, right?
Well, I don't know about the military losses, but I can tell you symbols are very important in this war. And it's all about perceptions, and it's all about how people perceive Israel and, versus Hamas. And the way it looks now is that Israel is winning. Israel is in the center of Gaza, and this is very bad news for Hamas. People in the Arab world are watching this, and they see the IDF in downtown Gaza, and this doesn't, look good for Hamas. If I were a Hamas leader, I would be very worried about what is happening right now in Gaza.
Well, I think the Iranian regime is also watching this very carefully. And as many of our viewers know, the Iranian regime are operating the Hamas marionettes of terror, as well as the Hezbollah marionettes and the Houthi marionettes. It's important to understand that in the what they call the axis of resistance, or we know what President Bush had called the axis of evil war room in Tehran, they are watching with great attention what's developing, which is why the North heats up as Israel makes its additional gains in Gaza to free the people of Gaza from the Hamas.
The defeat of Hamas will have major repercussions. It will change many things in the region. It will send a message to Hezbollah. It will send a message to Iran. It will send a message to the Houthis. It will send a message to all these armed groups in the West Bank that are now operating, by the way, they're also under attack by Israel. that you don't mess with Israel. That's a very important message that is being sent right now. So it's very important how the IDF operation continues. If it continues as it is, if things go as they are going right now, I would say that this is a blow to the axis of evil, to the Iran-led axis of evil in the region.
This is what the United States, my sense is, misunderstands to a certain degree, because by calling on the IDF and on Israel to undertake a ceasefire, which they have been doing. They've been pressuring Israel and sort of trotting out the hostage negotiation as the pretext. They're only bolstering the Hamas and hurting the hostages, because it allows the Hamas to pivot and regain its strength. And
Absolutely, that's what we saw at the Rantisi hospital, where apparently some of the hostages were being held. There was a humanitarian pause. Patients and other people were allowed to leave the hospital, and apparently the Hamas terrorists took the hostages with them. They seized the opportunity to take the hostage or remove the hostages from the hospital. That's why these pauses and ceasefires are problematic. They do play into the hands of Hamas. They allow Hamas to breathe.
And this is a big problem. Hamas breathing fresh air means the kidnapped victims, the life is being sucked out of them, and this is why the only real opportunity to free, assuming most of the hostages are still alive, is to keep placing enormous pressure on the Hamas. If they want to escape with their lives, they're going to have to make a deal on the kidnapped victims. What is of great concern, according to reports coming out of Qatar, is that the Hamas is only prepared to release a certain number of hostages. Seems to me that without a complete release, it would not serve Israel or the free world's interests.
Well, the claim in Gaza and by some Hamas officials is that we're not holding all the hostages, that they are scattered amongst others.
PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Palestinian residents of Gaza who are also believed to be holding some of these hostages. You know, then it really doesn't make sense. I mean, why would anyone kidnap a 10-month-old baby? This is unprecedented. Or holding a 90 or 85-year-old man, I mean, or woman. This is...
It seems like it's a business. I mean, it's the business of hostage holding. People want to get paid in order to turn over these kidnapped victims.
Yeah, I mean, this is, unprecedented. And it just doesn't make sense. I mean, many people cannot really understand it. I mean, what was Hamas thinking that you would be able to kidnap even 5 Israelis and Israel would not retaliate, Israel would not attack? What was Hamas thinking when they sent more than 1,000 or 2,000, we don't even know the exact number yet, of its Nukhba, the elite commando members into Israel? What were they thinking? I keep sitting with myself and trying to imagine what was going on in the mind of Yahya Sinwar and Muhammad Deif when they ordered this attack on Israel. What were they really expecting? That Israel would just, launch a few airstrikes and that's it?
I think it goes deeper than that, Khaled. You and I have chatted about this before, but I think the paymasters and taskmasters in Iran were thinking, hey, wait a second. Israel has been, over the last 9-10 months, more divided, violently divided, than they have been in decades. Israel is weak. Hassan Nasrallah was right.
They were saying it. Hamas was saying it. Hezbollah was saying it. And Palestinian Islamic Jihad was saying it. And Iran were saying it. They were watching the protests in Israel. They were hearing all the news about pilots refusing to serve, about officers signing all kinds of petitions against the judicial reform, saying, we will not report to duty and things like that. And Iran, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other groups were saying, wow, the Zionist entity is disintegrating, it is collapsing. I believe that the timing was no coincidence, by the way, the timing of the attack, the October 7 attack, because it came out of this belief that, Israel is very weak, the Israeli army is very weak, and this is probably the right timing. Of course, I believe that they've been planning this for a long time. This is an Iran inspired, Iranian-backed, Iranian-directed attack, which has a number of purposes. Number one, to prevent normalization between Israel and any Arab country, specifically Saudi Arabia. Number two, to damage relations between Israel and the Palestinians in general. Number three, to damage relations between Jews and Arabs inside Israel. Number four, to drag the whole region into a regional war, into some kind of a war, to get Hezbollah involved probably. So it's a multi-purpose attack initiated by Iran. I mean, we have no doubt that Iran was involved in one way or another in this attack. All these attempts to exclude Iran and say, they didn't know, no one believes it.
I think the Iranian mullahs and the IRGC, the domestic and foreign terror arms of the Iranian regime, underestimated, first of all, Am Yisrael, all of Am Yisrael, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians, the Druze, the ability of Am Yisrael to unite and drop all of their all of their disagreements as really divisive as they were, literally overnight.
It's the same way that Israel underestimated Hamas, by the way, and dismissed all these threats coming from Hamas. Let me point out, Dan, something very important that many people didn't notice. In December 2022, Hamas held a large rally in Gaza to mark the 35th anniversary of its establishment. What was that rally held, or which banner? What was the slogan that Hamas used in that rally? The slogan was, "We are coming to you with a roaring flood."
The flood of Al-Aqsa.
Exactly 1 year ago, Hamas was talking about planning a flood. We are coming to you, meaning to Israel. That was the slogan of the 35th anniversary celebrations of Hamas. And after that, they held all these drills in Gaza, and they were talking about the need to release all the prisoners, and we have plans, and we will attack, and we will invade, and we will kill, and we will eliminate Israel. So all the signs were there. Sadly, many in Israel and around the world underestimated. They underestimated Hamas, and they dismissed all these threats, claiming that, Hamas is deterred.
It's true. And Khaled, it seems that Israel woke up finally. I mean, we're hitting reports from people that we know in the field that are saying that the army is operating well. It's operating efficiently. We're paying a very high price between the women, children, and men, Arabs and Jews, both that have been massacred on October the 7th, and soldiers that have lost their lives. Some 60 soldiers have lost their lives already in this counterterrorism war. And obviously we're far from over now, because we've still got a major bubbling cauldron of Hezbollah terror, 190,000 rockets and laser-guided missiles from the north that are there. And in the meantime, Israel's keeping that on a sort of simmering, but not moving too much from offense to major, from defense to major offense.
Yeah, meanwhile, I see that the pressure from the Lebanese people on Hezbollah is mounting, by the way.
You mean to stay out?
Yes. I see a lot of people on social media, Lebanese officials, politicians, political activists, journalists, editors, literally begging, pleading with Hassan Nasrallah, don't take us to war. This is not our war. We should not be involved. We don't want to destroy Lebanon. Lebanon cannot take it. The economy is very hard, is very bad anyway. So you see a lot of concern over there about the possibility that Israel will retaliate. They take very seriously the threats coming from the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, about taking Lebanon back to the Stone Age. And they also look at what's happening in Gaza. And they're saying, we don't want to be Gaza number 2.
Yeah. That's the key. Also the Arab world, you and I were talking about this on the car over, the Arab world is waiting and watching in the wings to see whether Israel can actually really dismember, destroy, and decapitate the Hamas military, terrorist, and political leadership. And if they can, it would look favorable to the Arab world, not the opposite.
Yes, look, Dan, despite all the condemnations we hear from Arab leaders, and we saw what happened on Saturday at the Arab Islamic Summit, where they issued this final communique at the end of the meeting, and you read it, it's all condemnations of Israel and denouncing Israel and accusing Israel of war crimes and massacres without one word referring to Hamas. Now, despite this rhetoric, by the way, this is a language we're used to, by the way, the anti-Israel attacks. The impression you get from listening to the speeches of some of the leaders and from reading comments by Arab columnists and Arab newspaper editors and Arab political activists, the impression you get is that most of these Arab leaders and Muslim leaders would be happy to see Hamas gone, but they cannot say it openly.
So that's let Israel do the job, and then I think that we are actually, if Israel does the job and vanquishes the Hamas, showing strength and leadership as an indigenous member of this Middle East. That, by the way, all of the Gulf countries have put Hamas on the terror list and making them illegal. I mean,
what about Egypt? In 2015. An Egyptian court outlawed Hamas.
Egypt and
former Egyptian president Mohammed Morsi was accused of spying for Hamas. How many tunnels did the Egyptians destroy? More than 3,000 since the arrival of Sisi to power. What did Jordan do to Hamas? They closed down their offices. Already back in 1999, they expelled some of the Hamas leaders, including Khaled Mash'al. What did Syria do? In 2011 or 12,
they expelled the Hamas.
They also expelled Hamas.
Yeah.
The United Arab Emirates took action against Hamas. Saudi Arabia, until a few months ago, was arresting them and sentencing them to prison. They arrested the top representative of Hamas in Saudi Arabia. I think the number was 63 Hamas activists in Saudi Arabia, all rounded up and put on trial and thrown into prison, and some of them complained about torture and mistreatment and all that. Again, this proves my point that the Arab governments and the Arab leaders don't really care about Hamas. It's like deep inside, we hope Israel will finish the job.
And they also, not only do they not care, but they're very upset with the Palestinian Authority, the Fatah and the PLO. This is a point the United States government and the West must understand. From the point of view of the moderate or West amenable Arab world, as well as the free world, the Palestinian Authority, the possibility of bringing them back to Gaza, to rule Gaza, is as bad as having the Hamas in Gaza. The U.S. does not understand that point, or they're actually willfully blind, or they're issuing declarations that suggest that they think that the PA is the moderate a moderate leadership that can restore, at some point a thriving Gaza that can be reconstructed, and they are dead wrong.
Dan, we've been to this movie before. I think someone needs to remind the Americans that the Palestinian Authority was in Gaza between 1994 and 2007. First it was Yasser Arafat, and later it was Mahmoud Abbas. Were they able to stop Hamas? Were they able to stop the rocket attacks against Israel from Gaza? No. Finally they were kicked out of Gaza.
They were kicked out, and they were also murdered out of Gaza. I mean, they were hanged and tossed off roofs.
I was there when that happened during the Hamas coup, and it was quite bloody and very bad. We saw them dragging people to the streets and lynching them. We saw them, shooting many Palestinian police officers. At least 6 or 7 of them were thrown from rooftops. President Mahmoud Abbas has a traumatic experience with Gaza. He believes that Hamas tried to assassinate him, and he also believes that Hamas tried to assassinate his prime minister, Rami Hamdallah, and the head of the intelligence, Majid Faraj. Let me just point out one thing. It was Mahmoud Abbas, by the way, who outlawed the military wing of Hamas. That was, if I'm not mistaken, probably a year or two after he was expelled from Gaza. It was Mahmoud Abbas who first accused Hamas of using ambulances to smuggle their leaders out of Gaza during the 2014 war with Israel. I advise you to go on YouTube and see the speeches of Mahmoud Abbas. I've been following them. It was Mahmoud Abbas who imposed sanctions on Gaza in 2018 in an attempt to undermine Hamas. So we can add the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas to the list of Arab leaders and Muslim leaders who would like to see Hamas gone. So all this talk about bringing Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority back to Gaza is unrealistic. It is actually an attempt to revive the the Oslo formula, I would call it, by which you rely on Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority to deliver on the security front. These guys have failed in Gaza. They're failing in the West Bank. Mahmoud Abbas cannot arrest any member of the
Lion's Den.
The Lion's Den. He's negotiating with them. All what he can do is negotiate with them, try to persuade them. Oh, I'll give you a salary if you come and become a member of the Palestinian security forces. Did you hear about Mahmoud Abbas disarming the Jenin battalion in Jenin, a group that is armed and funded by Iran through Hamas and Islamic Jihad? No. So if he's not able to control what's happening in downtown Ramallah even, you want to send him to Gaza and rely on him to deliver over there?
For 3 reasons or 4 reasons, absolutely not. And this is what the American administration must understand. 60% of the Palestinian Authority budget, as you and I know so well, goes to Gaza and the Hamas leadership in Gaza. The Hamas leadership in Gaza runs the United Nations compound in Gaza. So when the United Nations talks about a minute of silence, they stand for a minute of silence in the United Nations General Assembly. They're actually standing for Hamas employees that were killed by the Hamas in Gaza. Just point number 3, the Palestinian Authority media, which you have pointed out, their media is as extreme and jihadistic as the Hamas itself. They incite to the murder of Jews every single day. I invite our viewers to go onto Palestinian Media Watch, go to Memory, MEMRI, and look at the videos that the children of the Palestinian Authority are talking about. They could be Hamas if you close your eyes. And number 4, the Soviet and Nazi conspiracy theories running around the Palestinian Authority discourse in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, is exactly the same that would be transported to Gaza. 5th, the people of Gaza will not accept Palestinian Authority governance over them. They will hang them from lampposts. And for all of those reasons, bringing the Palestinian Authority back is basically bringing back another version of Hamas without the Islamic haberdashery.
I would say, Dan, that in the past 14 or 15 years, the Palestinian Authority intentionally or unintentionally empowered Hamas and radicalized many Palestinians and drove them into the open arms of Hamas. How? Number 1, by pouring all this money on the Gaza Strip, paying salaries and allocating large funds to the budget of Gaza, they allowed Hamas, they exonerated Hamas, or exempted Hamas from carrying out its duty. So Hamas had enough time to build tunnels, to manufacture weapons, to smuggle weapons, and to focus on the so-called resistance. So this is one way how the Palestinian Authority empowered Hamas. Hamas did not have to deal with day-to-day affairs of the Palestinians because the Palestinian Authority was doing it. Hamas had enough time to, focus on the military, on building its military capabilities in the Gaza Strip. Number 2, the Palestinian Authority's rhetoric, and I've been saying this for a long time, it's anti-Israel rhetoric drives more and more Palestinians into the open arms of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Authority is acting against its own interest, because you radicalize your people against Israel, then people go to Hamas, and Hamas is supposed to be your rivals. So the Palestinian Authority is actually driving Palestinians into the open arms of its own rivals.
So the only way that the Palestinian Authority could ever think about moving into Gaza is if they completely re-engineered their narrative, stopped the radicalization.
Good luck with that.
That's the
Good
point.
luck with that.
That's the point. This is what the U.S.-led Western Alliance has been willfully blind to, or simply is not willing to admit that you have the same degree of radicalization coming out of the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, Fatah, as you do with the Hamas. So the way forward, as we talked about, at the Jerusalem Center of Public Affairs, we have something called the Palestinian Authority Accountability and Reform Initiative, and now, our dear friend and board member Sandra Gerber writes an article in the Jerusalem Post saying pay for slay will, as one of the major violations of the Palestinian Authority, must prevent them from coming to Gaza, because they will continue to destroy the future of the Palestinian people in Gaza. They will continue to threaten the Israelis living in the south, and there is nobody that is going to accept that reality. So what do? How do we go forward? We go forward through a completely out-of-the-box way of thinking.
I think it's premature to talk about the day after, by the way. Let's first of all wait and see how things develop in Gaza. Let's see the results of the idea of operation over there, and then we will talk. But why are we already talking? I think all this talk about who will run Gaza, and it's premature. It's actually allowing Hamas to start preparing. And you see all these threats coming from Hamas officials over the past few days. We will not allow anyone to take over. Any Palestinian who comes on the back of an Israeli tank will be killed, will be a traitor. So why allow Hamas, why give Hamas the opportunity to start preparing now?
Absolutely correct, Khaled. And I think that the message now is, for those of us who are students of the Middle East or analysts of the Middle East, is to keep reiterating the message with all kinds of evidence as to why the Palestinian Authority constitutes a major danger to the region. If they're brought in by the Americans, they're certainly not going to be brought in by the Israelis, but they're brought in by the Americans or international pressure to Gaza. It would be a disaster for the future of Gaza, and I think we have to focus on answering our dear American friends as to why that is a terrible idea and something that will not bring peace, but it will bring
Americans
continued...
are thinking about the two-state solution. They're hoping that if the Palestinian Authority comes to Gaza, then you can reunite the West Bank and Gaza and go back, back to square one, the Oslo Accords, and back to the two-state solution.
That's what the Palestinian Authority is demanding. They're demanding on the price for being brought back. I mean, this is the reports. You heard these reports as well. They're demanding.
They're setting conditions.
They're setting conditions for coming back to Gaza, which is connecting Gaza to the West Bank, which is completely...
Good luck with that.
Number one.
Find me one Israeli Jew who will accept that now.
Also, the West Bankers don't want the Gazans back to be connected to them.
That's not going to happen.
That's number one. Number two, they're talking about setting up a capital in Jerusalem. Number three, they're talking about a massive amount of international legitimacy, upgrading their profile at the United Nations General Assembly from non-member observer state to full member of the international community.
And this is Mahmoud Abbas, who doesn't have control or who has limited control in the West Bank.
Limited control in the West Bank. He's 89 years old.
According to most public opinion polls, about 80% of the Palestinians want him to resign, and probably more than 70% of the Palestinians have no faith in the Palestinian Authority.
So there you have an unstable Palestinian Authority already. They call him the mayor of Ramallah, by the way, because he doesn't have any control outside his immediate compound in the Muqatta. But so you have an unstable Palestinian Authority being touted to be the stabilizing effect in one of the most unstable places in the world right now, which is Gaza.
Before he was kicked out of Gaza, President Mahmoud Abbas had a big villa in Rimal neighborhood.
In Gaza?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was captured by Hamas. Since 2007, he could not even go back to his house in Gaza. So do you really think that Palestinians will welcome him if he returns to Gaza after an Israeli military operation?
It's, as they say in Hebrew, dimyoni. It's fantastic.
Time to start thinking in realistic terms and to stop dreaming. Stop trying to go back to what already failed. Stop with all these failed experiments. It's time to admit the Oslo Accords has failed. It's time to think, as you said, outside the box.
And there are many ideas outside the box, by the way, Khaled. You know, there are Arab allies in the region that are ready to help at the right time. They have got to see an uncompromised, total, complete Israeli victory over the Hamas. That's the next.
Absolutely. That's the only time when you will see people coming to Israel and talking business.
And then we've got to see the international community led by the United States talking about releasing hostages, babies, children, women, and men in an unprecedented act of kidnapping and hostage-taking. There was never any such act of brazen, malign violation of international law, of kidnapping 240. By the way, it's commensurate with 12,000 Americans. Imagine 12,000 Americans being held hostage by an ISIS, an ISIS-type Nazi Hamas regime
that
in
also killed
Canada.
Arabs and Muslims, by the way, in Israel.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that the talk about the day after and who will rule Gaza should start only after the release of all the hostages and after the war is over. Now, any talk about the day after only causes the harm and damage.
That's the message we're going to leave ourselves with, and we're going to pick it up next week with the revolution going on in the Israeli Arab community. You're not surprised, but to many in the West, some very, very surprising developments, and we're going to keep offering our analysis, perspective, and context on what is happening in this. This is an earth-shattering event taking place right now, not only for Israel, for the region, and for the West as well, which we'll talk about.
I would say it's parallel to the downfall of the Saddam Hussein regime.
There you go. Absolutely. And then you and I will be going to New York and to the West in the coming few weeks, and we'll be able to share this and other observations and analysis and assessments and initiatives with our friends in North America. So get in touch with us at JCPA. Khaled Toameh, thank you very much for your insights, as always, your partner in these great matters, one of the great observers and commentators in the Middle East. I'm Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. Come to jcpa.org and join our daily update with Khaled, with me, and the rest of our scholars, diplomats, intelligence people, IDF, former IDF commanders at jcpa.org. It was great to see you, Khaled.
Thanks.